Sister Helen Prejean, who wrote A Dead Man Walking, is famous for saying, everybody's a whole lot more than the worst thing they ever did. And certainly we believe that here at Homeboy. And a part of that, of course, is an invitation to be reverent for how complex human beings are. And always mindful of the fact that the prophet Isaiah tells us that God has a nickname for every human being, and that is my delight. That's how God sees every human being. So certainly God stands in reverence at how complex people can be. Yesterday I was speaking at UCLA to a big old packed class, and there was a guy like in the fourth row, a Latino, a little bit older than the class, the students there, and but he was hanging on every word and laughing and really kind of rapt attention. And so afterwards I was signing books. They had all read my book. And I was signing books, and he was in line, and I said, "Hey, thank you for paying such close attention." And he told me where he grew up, and he gave me 2 streets, and I went, "Oh, that's in the parish, Dolores Mission." I said, "Did I know your family?" He goes, "No, but my dad knew who you were. He hated you." I said, "Oh, okay. Why?" "Oh, because, you know, este pinche padre works with los desgraciados, you know, and he hated the fact that you worked with gang members, you know." And so we had this little conversation where we kind of tried to unpack it. He goes, "You know, it was curious, it was odd, because he was a gang member, and yet he hated the fact that you worked with gang members." And we started to talk about that, about how if you don't come to terms with your own brokenness, then you're going to despise brokenness in somebody else, and that's usually the way it works, and how complex people are. And yet still, we're God's delight, no matter what. Nobody can be reduced to one thing or another. It made me remember that years ago, I knew a guy, a homie, who was on the run, and I think it was a probation violation, or he hadn't reported, and they said, "Turn yourself in," and he said, "I'm never going back to jail." And I knew this kid real well. And one night on a New Year's Eve, there was a party. It was noisy. The cops were called, and he had a gun, and the cops shot him, and he killed a cop in the process as well. So we had 2 deaths. The cop who was killed was much beloved. Everybody loved this cop. He was God's delight. So was this kid who had killed him. That's sort of welcome to the complexity of things. So I knew this kid for a long time. I knew his mom, I knew his struggle, I knew his demons, I knew his humor, I knew his humanity, I knew his goodness. And so they asked me to do the funeral, and of course. And then I got all this pressure. People were calling me, police, elected officials, probation officers, "Do not do this funeral." I go, "How am I not going to do this funeral?" So I remember at the cemetery, I saw this homie of this guy who was killed. And I knew this guy since he was a little kid. And you know how homies will have these commemorative shirts, you know, "Rest in Peace, Flacco," or something like that. Well, he had a cap that he had printed just for the occasion, and I couldn't read what it was. And as I got closer, my heart sank, because it was a cap that had the lyrics of a song from back in the day, and the cap said, "I shot the sheriff," like it was a joke. And I went up and I greeted him, and I hugged him, and he was carrying his 1-year-old son in his arms, and I blessed his son. And I said, "Miko, I've known you almost all your life. You know that I love you. You're my son, and the day won't ever come when I think otherwise. But if your son could read right now, and if he read your cap, he'd be ashamed that he was your son." Every day, every breath, every step we take, every moment is a chance to have your kids proud that they got you as a dad. So I gave him a hug. He slowly took off the cap. And he's a whole lot more than the cap he wore. He's God's delight, just as I hope I was a whole lot more than the rage I felt that moment, and how it held me in its grip. This place stands for a high degree of reverence for how complex human beings are, that indeed everybody is a whole lot more than the worst things they've ever done. And so we want to see people as God does, with the highest deepest reverence for that complexity. To see each other today and always for the truth of who we are, that we're God's delight, and there's nothing you can do to alter that. That's just who you are. So let's have a good day.